Imagine walking into work, ready for another day, only to be met with pure hatred. That's exactly what happened to Marcus, a hard-working cashier just trying to do his job. The morning rush had just begun when a woman stormed in, already looking for trouble. Her sharp eyes scanned the store before landing on Marcus. From the moment she stepped up to the register, her tone was filled with entitlement. She barked her order, barely looking at him, and when he politely responded, her face twisted in disgust. Then, out of nowhere, she made a comment so cruel that the entire store went silent. The air grew heavy as Marcus stood frozen, his hands gripping the register. But what she didn't know was that karma works fast, and before she could even finish her rant, something happened that turned the tables, leaving her completely speechless. Marcus felt the heat of a dozen eyes on him, but he stayed calm. Years of working in customer service had taught him to keep his cool, even when people were rude. But this wasn't just rudeness. This was something uglier. The woman smirked, as if daring him to react. Other customers shifted uncomfortably, exchanging uneasy glances. A mother pulled her child closer. The store manager, James, stood a few feet away, watching the situation unfold with a tense expression. Marcus forced a polite smile, trying to move the transaction along, but the woman wasn't finished. She scoffed loudly, shaking her head. "This is what happens when they hire just anyone," she muttered, not even bothering to lower her voice. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest, but before he could say anything, another voice cut through the tension, one that no one expected, and in that moment, everything changed. The voice belonged to an elderly man standing a few feet away in line. His sharp eyes locked onto the woman as he cleared his throat. "Excuse me, miss, but I think you owe this young man some respect." His voice was calm, but firm, carrying the weight of experience. The woman turned, startled, as if she hadn't expected anyone to challenge her. "Excuse me," she snapped, crossing her arms. "This is none of your business." James, the manager, took a cautious step closer. He had seen difficult customers before, but this was different. He glanced at Marcus, who remained composed despite the humiliation. Meanwhile, other customers were whispering. A young woman pulled out her phone, recording discreetly. A father with his teenage son shook his head in disapproval. The tension thickened, hanging in the air like a storm about to break. But just when it seemed the situation couldn't escalate further, something happened that no one saw coming. The woman's face flushed with anger as she turned back to Marcus, her voice rising. "Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for expecting decent service," she scoffed, looking around as if searching for support. But the crowd wasn't on her side. The whispers grew louder, disapproving stares locking onto her from every direction. James finally stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice," he said firmly, "or I'll have to ask you to leave." She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "Leave? For what?" Telling the truth. Her eyes started to Marcus, daring him to respond. But before he could, the elderly man spoke again. "Young man," he said, turning to Marcus, "you don't have to take this." His voice was steady, filled with quiet strength. The woman rolled her eyes, but then a store security guard approached. And that's when her confidence started to crack. The woman's smirk faltered the moment she saw the security guard approaching. He was tall, with a no-nonsense expression, and his presence alone shifted the energy in the store. She straightened her posture, adjusting the strap of her designer handbag, but her eyes flickered with something close to panic. "Is there a problem here?" the guard asked, his deep voice cutting through the tension. He glanced at Marcus, then at James, waiting for an explanation. Before anyone else could speak, the woman let out a dramatic sigh. "Oh, give me a break. I was just making a simple complaint, and now I'm being treated like a criminal." She turned to the other customers. "This is ridiculous. Can't anyone say anything anymore?" The whispers in the crowd turned into murmurs of disapproval, but then just when it seemed the situation was reaching its peak, a new voice rang out, one that made the woman freeze in place. Someone who knew her secret had just stepped forward. A sharp, confident voice cut through the tension. "Mrs. Whitman." The woman's entire body went rigid. Slowly, she turned to see a younger woman stepping forward from the back of the line. Her expression shifted from anger to sheer disbelief. "You," she stammered. The younger woman folded her arms. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said, tilting her head. "I used to work for you, as your assistant, until you fired me for no reason." Gasps rippled through the store. The woman's face turned pale as her secret was laid bare. "I remember how you treated people," the former assistant continued, "always looking down on them. But here you are, embarrassing yourself in front of everyone." The woman opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The security guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I think it's time for you to leave." Silent and humiliated, she had no choice but to turn and walk out as the crowd watched in stunned silence. As the woman hurried out of the store, the tension slowly lifted. A few customers shook their heads, whispering about what had just happened. Marcus let out a quiet breath, his grip on the register finally relaxing. James patted him on the shoulder. "You handled that well," he said with a small nod of approval. The elderly man who had spoken up earlier gave Marcus an encouraging smile. "Don't let people like that bring you down," he said. "You've got more dignity than she ever will." The young woman who had exposed the customer's past wrongdoing walked up to Marcus. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," she said sincerely. "But I'm glad people finally saw her for who she really is." Marcus gave a grateful nod, appreciating the support around him. As he turned back to work, he realized something. Sometimes, justice comes when you least expect it.